Roll Tide, everybody. Welcome to Cover Crimson, starting a new week covering Alabama, and we appreciate you guys being here, brought to you by mybookie.ag. All right, we got a lot to get into today, but one thing that we wanted to address was the hill that you're going to die on in college football this year. You think about that. I'm going to hit the intro. All right, Roll Tide, everybody. Clint Lamb, I'm Mick Gillispie. It's a pleasure to talk Alabama football with you guys every day. We're just make it, set your timer, be here at noon, because we'll be here at noon. After our friends at the next round go off, we'll tag in and do our thing. And we appreciate you guys doing yours with us. All right, Clint Lamb, Mick Gillispie. Let me get right into it, Clint. JD Pickell, we both worked with him at On3, really good dude. He put this tweet out. What college football take is a hill you're dying on in 2025? And I know you love this kind of stuff, so I guess I'll just start with you.
I say that we do we branch out. Maybe we do one for college football if there's anything, a take you've got that doesn't involve Alabama. But we'll start with Alabama, and I'll start with and you can almost call this a bold take, but it's something that I truly believe, maybe not to this extent, but I feel like that James Smith, if he is not Alabama's best defensive player in 2025, I think he is amongst the top 2, maybe 3, but I would almost say his floor is number 3. That's where I will start, Mick.
I love that you're on someone's floor. I thought we were going to talk about how bad the officiating was.
I would just, when I saw that from Pickell and I sent it to you, I was like, man, what if someone asked me that question for Alabama, how would I feel? What would be kind of my answer? And this offseason so far, the importance of James Smith to me is huge for Alabama's defense in 2025.
Wow.
Because not only are you're losing guys on the interior, you're losing Tim Smith. Damon Payne is transferred to Michigan.
Yeah,
Jaheim
big loss,
Otis,
by the way, that I hate it.
Very underrated loss. As far as what he provided from a run stopping standpoint, a little bit of disruptiveness, but Jaheim Otis, he had played a handful of games last year. He had moved on. The last 2 years, he had not really lived up to the billing. So, you can say, how big of a loss is that? It's like if he goes to Colorado and he becomes this impactful player, it's like, well, if you could have gotten that, then that would have been great. But, because of those losses, because of the pedigree, now going into year 3, it's like as a true freshman, you could tell Nick Saban and company wanted to kind of get him involved, but you got to earn it. They're not just going to hand you reps to hand you reps. They got to trust you.
Right.
And so they were doing what they could at the end of games to get him as much action as possible, kind of like we've been seeing with Keelan Keeley in 2024 to an extent, but a little bit more for James Smith. And then the fact that he became a regular part of the rotation in 2024 and he showed some flashes, but it's like, man, I just really want to see some sort of consistency from this guy because the flashes are up there, in my opinion, with almost anybody in the country.
Right.
And then against Michigan, in the bowl game where Damon Payne isn't a part of that rotation, and you did see some Jeremiah Beeman, you saw some Edric Hill, but, kind of the main 3 interior guys was Tim Smith, Tim Keenan, and James Smith, and just the versatility that James Smith provides and the impact that I saw in that game, I see that, and that is like the perfect confidence-building way to close out your season. Alabama, from a team standpoint, not the way you want to close. But for James Smith personally, and just watching him dominate in the way that he did, both as a interior pass rusher and as a run defender, I start thinking to myself, if this guy can become more of that, more consistently in 2025, he's going to be a complete game wrecker. And when you start looking at the depth with Jeremiah Beeman, who's probably going to be your number 2 nose, you look at Edric Hill, who currently is probably your number 2 D tackle behind James Smith. You look at Steve Mbamoa, the JUCO addition. It's like, okay, I think he could probably get involved and be kind of that 5th interior defensive lineman, might push Edric Hill to be the 4th. But, I start saying, okay, there's a lot of questions behind the two starters. But I really like Tim Keenan as a run-stopping nose with, once again, a little bit of disruptiveness. But the guy who I think can be a complete game wrecker is James Smith. And I think when you talk about LT Overton, you talk about what they could potentially provide at Wolf. Mostly, though, LT Overton and just the game-wrecking ability that he has, I think that tandem can be the best that Alabama has had in several years. And so that makes me really excited for James Smith and really excited for this Alabama defense.
Guys, as we talk Alabama, don't forget that you can hang out with us at Cover Crimson, and it's cool to see some of you guys jumping on. Our friend known as LA Farms has joined the crew, so love to see that. Not only join, but say, hey, I'm here. Covercrimson.com. Clint's on there. Stacy Blackwood on there. I'm on there. EG's on there. You guys are on there. It's where we talk Alabama, cover recruiting, message board, all that stuff. So thank you guys for being a part of what we do. All right, I'm going to say, to me, it's Ty Simpson or Austin Mack. I don't think that it's fair to put the pressure on Russell yet, being that he's a true freshman. But football's won and lost at the quarterback position. And if Ty is not ready, then I think that Austin Mack's going to take the job, because I don't think Alabama can sit around and say, well, you know what, if the backup's better than the starter, that he's going to just sit in the background. I mean, this is a really open quarterback race, but whoever gets this job, we need them to throw the football. We need them to throw it consistently, and it can't just be deep balls. They got to be able to throw the short range pass. They need to be able to do the checkdowns. So whoever does this job, if Alabama's going to have a successful season, is going to have to be a complete quarterback when it comes to being able to make all the throws and move the offense. I think Alabama's with Ryan Grubb's going to be very aggressive throwing the ball. So the success or failure of this season, to me, and especially at the beginning of the year, you talk about some really tough games at Florida State. That is not going to be this isn't going to be the same Florida State that won 2 games last year. They're going to spend money. They're going to be a lot better. Then you got to play Wisconsin. So for me, I think that it comes down to quarterback, and I know that's kind of the easy answer, but at the same time, like, that's just the world of college football that we live in. And when Nick Saban first came to Alabama, it didn't matter who the quarterback was. I remember Mike Johnson telling me one time, Clint, he's like, what quarterback hasn't won under Nick Saban? And then I started thinking about it. And then I even go back to like his last year, Jalen Milroe, is that they were able to even take the things that we saw Milroe kind of struggle with this year, minimize those, and then minimize his impact on games. Like, I mean, and I thought, like, look, the guy had Heisman type ability if he would have been able to take a step forward. If he'd have played like he did against Georgia the entire season, he would have won Heisman. I don't think that's even a question. But I don't feel like that's the case anymore. I think that you got to have a Michael Penix for the offense to run, and I think that there's a potential to have that with one of these two guys.
Well, first of all, it's impressive what Nick Saban and company did. Blake Sims was a playoff quarterback for Alabama. Yeah. Jalen Milroe was a playoff quarterback for Alabama. Blake Sims turned out to be, he gets to the NFL, really never got a shot to be a quarterback. He was turned into a running back or kind of an athlete, and then he didn't stick around too long. I don't think that will be the case with Milroe. I think he's got, he can stick around at quarterback. Mm-hmm. But, it's like he looked much more effective under Nick Saban and Tommy Rees than he did under Kalen DeBoer. I do think he grew in some areas, some critical areas that will help him on the next level. Don't get me wrong, but I think the overall product and the effectiveness was a lot more consistent, even though it was still had its ups and downs under Nick Saban. And the fact that you were able to get that, it's like, there was a reason that Nick Saban in particular, he kept harping on playing within the offense, distributing the football to your playmakers, doing all these things, because the way that Nick Saban had built Alabama's program, you can have a quarterback that elevates everybody. Tua was a guy who really elevated the guys around, and Bryce Young certainly did that. He overcame a lot of deficiencies from others and everything else. But you never really wanted to see those guys being Superman. It was supposed to be complementary football. You got a complementary run game, you got a complementary defense, and just, what he was able to do on that front, I always thought was really, really cool, because you saw kind of all styles of quarterback throughout the years under Nick Saban, and he was effective. One of the things about the quarterback battle that's kind of rubbing me the wrong way, there are some fans that think Ty Simpson should be the automatic starter because he sat around and waited. I disagree with that take. That is not what upsets me, though. What upsets me is that is not how a lot of fans feel. The feeling from probably a majority of the fans is Ty Simpson deserves every opportunity to be the starting quarterback because he stuck around. You need to reward that loyalty with something. What he does with those opportunities is up to him. And if he blows it, if he's not good enough, for whatever reason, and it might not be that he's not good enough, it might be that Austin Mack's just better, or Keelan Russell is just simply better. If that ends up being the case, that's fine. But he deserves, based off of his loyalty, to have an opportunity to start at quarterback. And that is my first point. And the second point is we talk about the best player should play. And that is also something that I'm 100% on board with. Don't disagree at all. We just got to define what best is, because a lot of people, best is not most talented. Best is a combination of best decision maker, best one to operate the offense and make sure that the other people around them are involved and having an impact. It's making play. Who's the best at making plays on their own? It's a lot of different factors involved in this. That's more, I think sometimes we get confused with, who's the most talented guy? What's the ceiling of this team, with Keelan Russell? What's the ceiling of this team with Ty Simpson? The ceiling with Keelan Russell might be a little bit higher. But at the same time, is that what is absolute best for the team? Because the lows might be a lot, the floor might be a lot better with Ty Simpson than it would be with Keelan Russell. So there's a lot of conversation involved here, and I don't lean really one way or another. If Keelan Russell ends up being the starter, I'm completely fine with that. If Austin Mack ends up being a dark horse guy who wins it, completely fine with that. If Ty Simpson ends up being the guy, completely fine with that. Let it play out. Give Ty every opportunity. The fact that there are some people who were actively pulling against him, and granted, there were people that were actively pulling against Jalen Milroe, I do think that those people had actually seen him on the field enough to know what the product was with him as a starter. And if you see Ty Simpson and you see a product that is not passing the eye test, it's not living up to the standards, it's got limitations, it's kind of holding Alabama back in some ways. If you want to make those same arguments, that at that point, just like I was with Jalen Milroe, I will be the same way with Ty Simpson. But what I'm seeing now is you haven't seen enough of Ty to know if he's it or not. He should be a guy who everybody pulls for that is an Alabama fan, because he will be potentially a phenomenal story of sticking around, sticking it out, showing loyalty in an NIL era where he could have taken the easy way out like a lot of guys do, and he stuck around and he was rewarded for that. Mm-hmm. If you have to go to Keelan Russell, not only will that be unfortunate for Ty, but not only will that be you might have some freshman mistakes, maybe one of those ends up costing you a game, all that stuff, but it's more so of that's an example of a guy who stuck around and it didn't work out for him. So other guys are going to look to that in the future, and it could impact their decision. Hey, that's a guy who, they kept saying, stick around, stick with us, and, he never ended up being the starter. He wasted his time. I don't want to see that for Ty, and I don't think any Alabama fan should.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, man. And you know what? We've kind of seen that as something that this program can really hang their hat on, is that guys have stuck it out. And have waited for their opportunity to be the starting quarterback. And the guy that just won the Super Bowl lost the starting quarterback job fair and square. And we still loved him and Jalen Hurts. But then, you think about Mac Jones, obviously Tua was behind the scenes for a while. Ty has waited his turn, and you hope that it works out for Ty just because of the patience that he's shown. And I agree with you on that. But it's wide open. And I'll say this, I'm actively pulling for the guy that's going to help us win.
Yeah, agree.
Like for me, but I know what you mean. Like there's people that get like they want one guy over another. And We had the Milroe versus Ty Simpson, kind of battle for a while, but it was obvious to me that Milroe was the guy. I mean, like, once we kind of got through the first couple games, not this past year, but the last year, and we saw both guys, it was easy, that Ty wasn't ready for the job. The battle to me that made no sense was, and I used to say this on my show all the time, is I never thought Blake Sims was a quarterback. And it doesn't surprise me in the NFL that he got there. And I didn't know Jake Coker at the time. I didn't know we'd have him on our channel. I never knew I'd do a show with him. But I just remember 2014 going, okay, this guy just transferred from Florida State. You know what he can do. What's the deal? Why aren't we playing a guy that's a quarterback in that quarterback spot? See, I would have probably used Blake Sims as a do-it-all guy, instead of, but then I saw where Lane Kiffin recruited him when he was at Tennessee, and I realized, oh, okay, that's why we did this, and then when, obviously when Coker got the job the next year, rolled through, and by the time that season ended, he was really good. Can you imagine him having another year?
You talking about Coker?
Yeah, I mean, like,
I've always wondered that.
Yeah, it's like it's like for him. And by the way, guys, you need to check out Elephant in the Room. We had Shank on with us Friday night, so that shows out. It's pretty funny. It's like 2 hours.
It's incredible.
First 45 minutes didn't record for some.
I go through and I'll look for clips to pull and to share on social media, and I'm going through it and I'm like, oh, this is a good one. So I pull it. Then I'm like, well, I'll keep listening for a few more minutes. Oh, damn, man, this one's good. Pull that, and then I'm, all right, I'll go a couple more minutes. And then next thing I know, I got like 5 clips, and I'm like, now I don't know which one to share. And so I ended up picking one I thought was hilarious. The Ardarius Stewart, J.K. Scott story is phenomenal. I mean, Alphonse Taylor, Shank is so funny.
Yeah.
And just the way that he came in with what go find out exactly what the first words were that Ardarius Stewart ever said to Shank. It is incredible. And it is, if you know or you've heard the stories about Ardarius, you know that is exactly something he would do. It's so funny.
Yeah, I like Shank. To me, is a star in the making. And it just and I don't mean it just what you guys see here. It's like when when we get off camera and you just talk to him, like the way that his brain works is interesting to me. Like it's like his thought process, because he's a really well thought person, and like someone that you could just sit around and hang out with and have a conversation with, and like a conversationalist, and I feel like we try to be the same way, like where you can kind of take a topic and you're like, oh man, and I didn't really think about it like that. And so him being in high school, I would love to be in his class. Forget about the football part of it, but just like
I'd love to be coached by him too, though. He just feels like a guy that would have your back, but he also is going to kind of have fun with it. I like those coaches who can kind of do both. They can kind of pick at you and stuff, but they also can get, if he's the kind of guy, I mean, he's a big dude. If he gets serious, you get serious too, and you're going to listen to him. But yeah, he seems like a great dude.
He really is, man. Big heart.
You can tell.
Big brain too. So it was a lot of fun. And when Coker told me the first time we were bringing him over, I was like, man, like there's not a lot of these. I mean, look, I appreciate all the former players, right? I mean, I respect the fact that they played at Alabama and won a national championship. But I used to work with him at the radio station in Tuscaloosa, and we just never worked together, and I never met him. But I just remember like him doing some stuff, and I don't even know what he did. I just remember being like, man, this guy's Twitter is like really something. Like,
his Twitter was great, man.
I loved it. He dialed it back now that he's a high school football coach. But anyway,
crank it back up. So what we need to do. We need to crank it back, because I mean that's peak Twitter with Shank, going in on stuff.
I know. He didn't talk much about the Greg McElroy controversy from, like the last time he was here from last year. We didn't really get into that, but he said they made up or whatever. So he was fine with that. It was pretty funny when that all went down, like think that he's like, from his perspective, I came in at 4 something and I'm playing at 3:35 and this guy's calling me lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to argue there, Yeah, you're standing there with your black jersey on, and I'm over here huffing and puffing, and then I got to go get in the trenches. But love them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you take 60, 65, 70, 75 pounds off of me.
Jeez, man.
I'd let somebody try to call me lazy. That's insta swing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Like, I'm just thinking about how hot it was. I'll tell you guys this. When I first got to Alabama, I needed a job one summer, and this guy was like, "Hey, I got a lawn care service. You can come work with us, right? You got to be out there at like 6:00. So I roll out at 6:00, and they're doing yard work around DCH, and I lasted 2 hours, man. I mean, it just wasn't my bag, dude. It was it was 105 by like 8:30. And I'm going, oh hell no, man. Like I'm gonna make sure I study a lot harder.
Hey, don't ever let anybody
do that. Respect, man. Respect.
Hey, don't let anybody ever talk you into hauling hay. That's one of the hardest jobs I've ever done. And you're blowing out black stuff out your nose for a week. But yeah, I've been in a couple of those. Now, see, I was brought in as a young, strapping high school kid by my father, and so there was no such thing as quitting 2 hours in. You were either going to be carried off after a beating, or you were going to be carried off after spending an entire day out in that heat, and you were about dead. But I mean, it's tough in the state of Alabama working outdoors. It really is. But getting back to the quarterback talk, because I did want to bring this up because I thought it was interesting. Keelan Russell's mom, she tweeted. When was this? This was yesterday afternoon, and I wanted to discuss this because I thought ringing endorsement for Alabama. If you're Kalen DeBoer and company, this is exactly what you want parents of kids to be saying. She said, when I say I am 100% pleased with Alabama football and the university period, the communication, the scheduling, tutoring, and the embrace of Keelan Russell that Keelan Russell has received has been outstanding. Thank you for leveling up and keeping these men together. Let's keep it rolling. And so, sometimes you got problematic parents that you got to deal with, especially in this NIL area with everybody. Sometimes you got kids' dads becoming their managers. Not only does Keelan Russell, from everything that we've heard and seen, does he have his head screwed on straight, and he's a very confident kid, and he likes to have fun, but he's not Ron Williams, but he's kind of Ron Williams, you can see that it was really good parenting that kind of led to that. She seems like the tutoring matters to her, the communication, and understandable. My parents were the same way. They wanted to stay in communication with us when we got down there, but also if your kid's gonna be playing football for somebody and they're like a father figure, you want to have an open line of communication with them. So I thought it was great, and I thought it was worth bringing up.
Yeah, that is great. I remember when Bryce Young was at Alabama, and boy, he was so good. I mean,
his parents were too.
Yeah, best quarterback, and his parents were. And I was doing the post-game show on Bama Insider back when Bama Insider was a thing, and his aunt called.
Oh, she called in.
Yeah. And that was like, people would come up to me and be like, man, I remember when Bryce Young's aunt, I said, man, I just let her talk, and she was so proud of him. And I want to say it was after we beat Georgia. I think it was
SEC championship 2021.
Yeah. But great family, great guy, saw the big picture, and the small picture, but the big picture, did things the right way. And Keelan Russell's the only guy that I think it was Bryce Young, that he's the only guy that has actually like more like like accolades. I don't know, what is it, like he's
awards.
Like, yeah, right. The recruiting stuff part of it, comes in higher, so those are the two highest rated recruits that we've ever had, probably the way to say it. And
quarterbacks for sure.
Yeah, well, right. No, I mean, I'm telling you, like, they're like elite 5 stars or whatever, right?
Yes, the top tier of the top tier.
Mm-hmm. To see that the family's like, hey, because there's going to be a lot of pressure, man, like to try to pull him out of Alabama. They don't stop recruiting anymore. And what I mean by that is, don't get me wrong, there is tampering going on every single day now, and there's no, it's the Wild West. So to see, his mom come out and say that, it's like, hey, you know what, he loves being at Alabama. Get out of the way and let's see what happens. And I'm all about it, because he's going to have his time. And I love, the thing I love about him the most is his confidence. I don't know how you achieve a goal when you're not confident that you can achieve that, right? And some people are, but they don't voice it, and I can tell, and that's just a different style of personality, But he's like, hey, the goal is to get ready to be the starter as soon as I can, and the goal is to win national championships. And man, that you've came to the right place for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say that Ty should be given every opportunity to win the job, doesn't mean that Keelan shouldn't get opportunities. He should get plenty as well. Like, he's talented enough. It's like, I will agree with anybody. If Ty Simpson reached his absolute ceiling and Keelan Russell reached his absolute ceiling, I think Keelan Russell has the higher ceiling. And so if they both were to hit that, okay, yeah, I mean, I'm all, and that's why I say there could be some variation or version of that where Ty is doing everything he can and he's doing well, but Keelan's just that good. But Keelan's got to prove that. And so it's really not just about what Ty does with his opportunities. It's about what Keelan does with his. He wants to start as early as possible. I can assure you. He's not coming in saying, you know what, he's not Arch Manning, where he's coming in saying, I'm probably going to sit my first year or maybe my first couple of years, and I'm totally fine with that. But, I do think that it's not one of those situations where he's like, oh, you either start me or I'm out. I don't think he's that type of kid. He's ready to battle, I guess is the way to put it. And I think that's what Alabama needs. Is there anything else as far as, like, do you have any sort of hill you're willing to die on from a college football point of view? You might not, and we can throw.
No, I do.
Okay, I'd love to hear that.
If they don't get the NIL stuff fixed, they're going to ruin this game. And that includes the transfer portal. So I'm putting those both in the same category. They have got to figure out, and if that means going to the government to get them to lay out some kind of rules. And I'll tell you this, Clint, we talked about they were trying to say that Title IX played into NIL, and then they finally came back and said no, which I told you that they had to do that. NIL is based on, obviously, your ability as an individual to make money, not a government. This isn't communism where everybody gets the same thing. Ryan Williams has a different NIL look than anybody else on that team right now, because he just does things that nobody else can do, and he's earned that.
And he's got marketability. He's a well-spoken kid. The hair,
right.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of a guy.
What I'm saying, right? That's 100%. What it's supposed to be for, right? But if they don't get this under control, Ohio State bought the championship this year, no doubt about it to me. And I said, look, I told you they were going to win from day one because they spent more money than everybody else. They went and bought our best player. They went and bought Ole Miss's best player. They did that to other schools. They kept their guys because they spent, $30 million to do it. If they don't make it to where there is some kind of salary cap, then and put some restrictions on the transfer portal, they're going to ruin the game. That's the hill I'm dying on. They got to get it fixed.
I will say, and anybody that's being honest with you, they'll probably admit it. We kind of thought for a second, it's like, okay, what are we doing something wrong as far as the channel? Are we putting out the wrong content? The content that people really don't want to, they're not interested in hearing or whatever. And so we're thinking, okay, what's kind of, because, traffic's down, and it's going to be down. It's the off season, but like, it just feels like that interest, kind of fell off a cliff for a little while there. And then you start listening to other shows and they'll say some variation of that as well. And it could be a Georgia show. It could be a national show. I think college football, this is probably the first season where by the end of the year, I think everybody was ready for college football to be over. I wasn't. Ooh. We do this for, a living. I eat, sleep, breathe, and then plenty of fans do too. But it's like our things look a lot different for us in the offseason as far as our content is concerned. But by the end of the year, I would say a majority of the people, and this, Ohio State fans, I'm sure they're a little different. They loved the run and everything else, but it felt like that most college football fans were kind of like, okay, And I think it's the exhaustion of NIL. By that point, like that window had already opened, and you kind of know a lot of the guys who are leaving, and you're frustrated by that as a fan. And you do got signing day, and that's exciting. So you got the influx coming in, but it's just I do think right now they got to get some of this stuff fixed, because it feels like in some ways when you look at the numbers, it's like college football has never been better. We're going to be as honest with you on this channel as we possibly, to the best of our ability. We might be lying to ourselves about something, but what we're sharing, we feel, and I do feel like that you are correct. College football, if they don't get something fixed here, it's going to suffer. So that I'm right there with you. Now, here's the other question that I got for you, Mick. Last question. What I do like about the expansion, I feel like if Alabama would have gotten in 2022 with Bryce Young, with the way they finished against Kansas State, that was one of the best teams in the country.
It was.
And it was just, it was some unfortunate, Bryce getting hurt. I think that affected things. It's like, okay, but he was back against Tennessee, but he wasn't 100%, but he still played really well. Alabama, that was defense related why they lost that game. So you can't really say it was because of the Bryce Young injury. He did play poorly in Baton Rouge, but with the way that played out, but it's just like unfortunate circumstances kind of led to Alabama losing some games they probably shouldn't have lost, but it's some unfortunate luck on some of it. The 2-point conversion, the way that went down, it's just as easy that the roles were, coin toss decides who gets the ball first in overtime. If it would have gone the other way, maybe Alabama's going for 2, they win it and they get it. So I'm just saying luck plays a part in all of this. What I like about the expansion, Ohio State felt like the best team, and they didn't play well against Michigan. They lost a game. It was, just not Ohio State's day. It was Michigan's day. But through the expansion, if this would have been a 4-team playoff, not only is Ohio State not getting in, Ron Day might not even be there anymore. He might have gotten fired. And now he's being talked about as one of the best coaches in college football. Crazy how that works. But my point is, what I like about it is that I think it takes the luck out of it a little bit. Like if you have some catastrophic injuries and you lose guys for the season that would have impacted it, sure. But it kind of allows for a little bit more of that. You can do what Ohio State did, and you still, if they would have had the 4-team playoff, we would probably have always said, man, I know Ohio State didn't even make the 4-team playoff, but part of me always felt like with the talent on that roster, they were probably the best team in college football, and yet they wouldn't have even had the opportunity to win it all. They were able to prove that once things started to matter. I feel like if Alabama would have been given a similar chance in 2022, it is possible that would have happened as well. I would have felt quite confident in it, actually. I do like the fact that the expansion has at least made it to where luck doesn't completely screw you over in certain situations, or just one bad performance that, like, it is reflective of you, but it's also not as reflective of you enough to say, like, that poor performance against Michigan, that mean that all of a sudden Ohio State was not the most talented team in college football and probably was the best team in college football? No, but it would have kept them from ever being able to hoist that trophy. I do like it from that aspect.
Well, and I think just kind of to follow that up too, is that the biggest problem that we have in college football is that the schedules aren't balanced.
Yes.
And so you bring up that Alabama team. I think they would have won the national championship that year. Georgia got so lucky that they didn't have to play Alabama, because Alabama would have beat them like they do every other time they play Georgia. Okay, just would have happened. And I said that, and you guys that have been with me know, I said it week after week after week after week. Georgia is so lucky, and I said it back then, that they didn't have to play Alabama. And they were lucky that they didn't get to play Alabama, because Bama was going to be punished because there was this Bama fatigue. They lost at LSU, who was the SEC champ of the division champ, right? And at Tennessee, and they were on last second plays.
3 points total, I think.
Yeah, you got these, this national media conglomerate that wants to punish Alabama because they're tired of seeing them there, right? Same thing this year. We're not going to put them in because they got in last year over Florida State, right? So we're going to put in SMU, didn't belong. Clemson, didn't belong. I guess they got an automatic bid. The ACC doesn't deserve an automatic bid anybody, by the way, anymore. And then Indiana, these schools that were just, didn't belong in. And it would have been better for me if they'd have put in Ole Miss or South Carolina than some of these schools, right? So by expanding the playoff, you shrink the opportunity that these morons on the playoff committee have to ruining the game based on their bias instead of looking at the body of work that these teams. It's you go back and look at what Indiana did, and you go back and look at what SMU did, and it doesn't stack up to what Bama and South Carolina and Ole Miss. Ole Miss did. But with all of that said, Ohio State's a great example. The Big Ten was better than the SEC this past
at
year.
the top. At the top, and that and that's
they
kind
won
of
it because of that. They had the best teams,
and that's what they're trying to do. I don't know that I like the automatic bids for anybody. I kind of want it just to be, hey, let's go play some football. Let's figure out who the best 16 teams are. The reason that the SEC is demanding that, and of course the Big Ten is going to try to they're going to demand equal. But I think the SEC more so is pushing for the automatics and the 4 automatic bids is because they don't trust the committee. They don't trust the human element not to let things like, Bama fatigue come into play, or the fact that a team might, they play a 10 times easier schedule. Like, you have to be a part of that grind to know what that type of schedule is. And a lot of these people who are these decision makers, a lot of them's never played football. It's the common, just watching it like everybody else. You can know a ton about the game, but knowing exactly how difficult playing a type of schedule like Georgia played this past season, that's something that a lot of people really don't understand, because, the grind, the Vanderbilts of the world, the Arkansas of the world, like all of these become much more challenging games than you realize when you're getting beat up and you're not even close to being 100%. And they're teams that it's like, if you slip up, they can beat you. I don't know if there's a world where Indiana beats Ohio State. If they play their C game, I still think they're winning that game. Yeah. If Bama plays its C game against Vanderbilt, they only show up really on one side of the football, and they're kind of limited. They lose.
Let me stop you right there too. The other thing is that you can't go through the SEC and hide away like Indiana did last year.
Right, that is very true. And even Texas,
it's not gonna fall where the schedule's just not gonna put anybody decent on. For you, you're not going to go through a year where you don't play the top teams. It just doesn't happen like that.
Texas got as easy of a run as you possibly can in the SEC, but even their easiest run that you could have possibly aligned for any SEC team is still worlds ahead of anywhere where Indiana was.
Yep.
So that is a perfect example. I will always criticize Texas for their schedule because I always want to be fair with that. And relative to other SEC, they were getting the SEC treatment of, we played in the SEC. We had this really tough schedule. It's like, but you didn't, not relative to everybody else's in this, conversation in the SEC. But when you compare Texas's schedule to Indiana's, it's really, it's not close. Vanderbilt would have been, second or third best win on Indiana's schedule. And I don't know where they ranked on Texas's, but I guarantee you it wasn't 2 or 3.
Guys, we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use that promo code next round to double your initial deposit. March Madness is almost here. The SEC tournament is here. And take advantage of that right there at mybookie.ag. Play all those games. Check it out for yourself. And you using next round, they'll double your initial deposit at the sports book. All right. Switching gears a little bit. First off, don't let me get off here without giving baseball a shout out with their biggest comeback win in school history against Ohio State, Roll Tide, in Jacksonville. But I want to talk some basketball. The Crimson Tide beat Kentucky 96-83 in Tuscaloosa, back on track after losing twice in a row to Auburn and then Missouri. Nate Oates has changed things up a little bit. He is he's moved, and I think you mentioned that this was going to happen. He moved Sears to the 2 spot so he could score more. And now all of a sudden he's scoring more. He became the first player in the NCAA this year to score 30 points in back-to-back games, right? 30 or more. But the thing that I love is that Nate Oates said now that basically there's zero tolerance for effort. You screw up, you don't do the effort thing, they're going to pull you out and put somebody else in immediately. He is locking in on pushing this team's buttons for them to be, they're not going to win the SEC this year. Auburn's going to win the SEC. It doesn't matter. What they want is to win the national championship. And he's doing everything that he can to have these guys ready to roll, because the margin of error for them, they're really good and they can beat anybody. But they've got to start doing this. You know what I mean? Like distancing themselves. And he's just not sitting back and accepting, like, hey, we're really good right now. We're a top 5 team. No. Now it is, hey, guess what? You make a mental or physical mistake and you're not doing the things you need to do, you're out and somebody else is coming in, because we got a deep bench and we're playing everybody.
First of all, they have the roster to be able to do that and be able to do that with confidence. Like, a lot of people will say, hey, you got to send that message anyways. It doesn't matter what you're putting in. Like, you got to get it. The good part is they can afford to put quality players, as long as they're playing hard, out there on the court. I wonder how much. I mean, I think he's just wired this way. I think he would have been this way regardless. I just wonder, in many ways, I don't know what's going to happen with Auburn this year. I don't know how far they're going to go. I mean, I really don't. But at least right now, kind of Auburn has been what everybody expected Alabama to be. Like, everybody was looking at this roster and thought this could be one of the best college basketball teams of all time. Alabama just went to a Final Four, and the roster is deeper, it's better. You added Cliff. I mean, you're talking about adding bigs, and you added Cheryl as well. Like, you can play Grant at the 4 spot now. And Latrell Wright's injury and stuff, all that stuff plays a part in how things have actually ended up turning out. But it's just, when your arch rival kind of is what everybody expected you to be, I think that probably lights an extra fire, a little bit of a fire under, Nate Oates. And that's going to trickle down to everybody else, because he's looking at that and saying, hey, we're more than capable of being that. And so why aren't we? It's some things, definitely some things need to be fixed from a coaching standpoint. But an effort at times it plays a part in that. So he's trying to send a message, and I totally get it and agree with it.
Yep. All right, so they'll take on Mississippi State tomorrow night, and that'll be a game where it'll be another pun intended dogfight for Alabama. But at least they're back on track again, and did a better job of shooting 3 at home, because they haven't done their best at home this year when it comes to making 3-point buckets. But it doesn't get easier. Every game for them is going to be one of those games that is tough against ranked teams. And the rest of the way, it's going to be nothing but a gauntlet. They may play a team in the tournament, in the SEC tournament, that's not good their first game. And then after that, the rest of the way. And then the NCAA tournament, maybe a first round, second round game that, that the team's not great, but they're all big games. I mean, like you could feel just that it's time now, like if they're going to waste this season, if they don't take advantage of it right now. And Nate Oates is it's like a jockey in a horse race. Like, he's digging in, and he's got let's go.
Yeah, I am looking forward to seeing how they finish, because if they come together and they continue to build off that Kentucky game, and they can string some stuff together and then do well in the SEC tournament, you want them. This is the time where you really want them to start playing their best basketball. And I think Saturday's game was definitely them moving in that direction. They just got to continue.
All right, and finally, I have not been, and I used to be one of the broadcasters of Alabama baseball, both TV and radio, and I love Alabama baseball. Look, Jim Wells is a big mentor in my life. I was really embarrassed by the gambling scandal, and felt like the team got a little bit too soft, like to look at themselves in their uniforms. And I'm not talking about this year's team. I mean, just the program, they hired the one coach when Mitch Gaspard left that was just a jerk to everybody. And I got to give him a lot of credit, man. You could watch a team in any baseball league, right? Down 10, never win. They came back in the Jacks, what was it? The Jack tournament in Jacksonville, Florida. And they were down 10 in the bottom of the 4th. And they came back against Ohio State. And was it Hoodoo hits a 3-run walk-off homer to beat the Buckeyes 12-10. Barry Allen, who when I was doing baseball at Alabama was the SID, puts out, "That's the largest Alabama win in school history." And if you know Barry, that's my Barry impression. It was, I think, a 9-run come from behind win against Kentucky some other time. But what a win for them, man. What a way to walk off. Then there was like a picture from the locker room, and they're firing everybody the bird. You guys deserve to fire the bird to everybody. I love it. Give me a little
Did
action,
you agree?
man. I want Joe Caruso's back again. I want the GW Kellers, man. Give me the Andy Phillips. You know,
Did you agree with the bird flips?
love it.
No,
Love it.
excuse me. Did you agree with the apology for the bird flips?
No, don't apologize.
Okay.
Don't
a
apologize.
lot of fans. I saw the apology that, and a lot of fans were like, "Don't you apologize?"
Don't apologize.
A couple of people in there were pretty upset about it.
Well,
Get in the comments if you were upset about it. But if you are
No.
like, get in the comments too. If you're like, you know what, I'm right there with Mick. Don't apologize for nothing.
Hey, look, I'm one of the people that remembers covering the team when they were going to World Series. And Bama baseball was not a bunch of choir boys, you know. Look, I talked to Jared Kingery, who's I say the best pitcher they had back in the day, you know, long relief closer, all the time. He's one of my best friends. He was on the World Series team in '97 that should have won it all. The Dax Norrises, who by the way is a head coach now. Roberto Vaz. I mean, these guys were kind of like the dudes that you didn't want to get into a street fight with. And then all of a sudden we became the country club guys, you know, and you could see the program kind of changing to, you know, hey, you know, I look really good in this Alabama uniform. Let me tell you something. When Bama baseball was good, they wore one uniform. Jim Wells didn't want them to look like they walked out of Hibbett's. The guys that had the dirty hats, they were, you know, that weren't really worried about how clean my uniform was. Dirt bags, we call them in baseball. They're just going to keep coming at you. I hope that this is an indicator that we're getting back to that with Bama baseball, because they haven't won anything since 2006. It's been a long time. Spencer Pennington shout out on that team. Who is it? David Robertson, who's still trying to find a job, was the star pitcher of that team. The guy's 39. So Bama baseball has not been good in a long time. So if they want to flip the bird after a 10-run comeback, hey, I'm right there with you guys. Roll Tide. Let's go. My rant.
I got to be honest. I thought you were ending the show right there. I thought that's how we do this. That's a great way to sign off.
Hey, like, subscribe, thumbs up. If you got a problem with me, get in the comments section. And if you don't, send the bird right back at me. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.